dawn of the American Revolution, the fight for liberty wasn't just waged by soldiers and statesmen. It was also led by pastors, men of faith who stood in their pulpits and on the battlefield. This is their story.
On April 19th, 1775, the very first day of fighting in the War for American Independence, conflict occurred between colonists and British redcoats at the North Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts. Reverend William Emerson, a Congregational minister, lived just up the hill in a house known as the Old Manse. What he witnessed that day had a great impact on his life. Emerson went on to serve as a chaplain at Fort Ticonderoga in New York. He did not live long enough to see the full effect of his example as a wartime minister because he died during the following year. But he was the first of many colonial clergy at the forefront of the Revolution. The British took notice, and soon these patriotic preachers were called the Black Robed Regiment.
It is well documented that Christian clergy played important roles in the settlement and development of the English colonies in North America. They were town leaders, teachers, and moral authorities. During the Great Awakening, their influence grew even more. In the decades leading up to the Revolution, tensions rose between the colonies and the mother country, and so did the activity and passion with which the clergy addressed issues facing the Americans. It was common for a preacher to use examples of British oppression of the colonists as lessons in their sermons. Soon, it became clear that such strife could be couched in a religious context, illustrating a battle between good and evil. Their words stirred their congregations and caused them to tremble in fear of what was to come. The issues listed in every petition to the king or parliament could be heard somewhere in colonial Sunday sermons. During the War for Independence, American clergy chose topics from the Declaration of Independence in their sermons.
It remains unknown how many clergymen took up arms in the colonial militias or among the Continental Regulars from 1775 through 1783, or how many ministers contributed in other ways during the conflict. But several sterling examples leave a powerful legacy. Take Reverend Samuel Cooper of Boston. He was a congregational pastor at Brattle Street Church and a close ally of Sam Adams and the Sons of Liberty. In the 1760s, Cooper publicly denounced the Stamp Act and Townshend Acts from his pulpit. Pastor Jonas Clark, an Anglican clergyman, played a key role on April 19th, the same day as Reverend Emerson. When Sam Adams and John Hancock visited Lexington the night before to assess readiness, they stayed at Clark's house. Paul Revere even stopped there during his famous ride. And then there's Reverend John Witherspoon, a Presbyterian minister and the only active clergyman and college president to sign the Declaration of Independence. Just weeks before July 4, 1776, he delivered a sermon called The Dominion of Providence over the Passions of Men, which logically explained why independence was a moral and theological necessity. He went on to serve in the Continental Congress until 1782.
One of the most memorable figures of the so-called Black Robed Regiment was Peter Muhlenberg, a Lutheran pastor in rural Virginia. He provided one of the most dramatic examples of adamant support of the war for American independence by a clergyman. Before the war, he had served in the Virginia House of Burgesses. By 1776, he was pastoring a church in Mount Pisgah, Virginia. On January 21st of that year, he used the time-honored scripture of Ecclesiastes 3 for his sermon. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to get, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. As he drew to the end of the passage, Muhlenberg altered the final line, time of peace and a time of war. Upon concluding his rephrased scripture, he tore open his minister's robe to reveal his Continental Army uniform underneath. What clearer imagery could have existed to illustrate the Black Robed Regiment? It is estimated that over 160 men from his community enlisted on that very day. Pastor Muhlenberg continued as a soldier in the Continental Army as part of the 8th Virginia Regiment. He served under General George Washington at the battles of Trenton and Princeton in New Jersey, and was even present at the final engagement at Yorktown in Virginia. By the time the war ended, Muhlenberg was a brigadier general.
Many pastors, known and unknown, fought to establish this nation. They set examples of what it meant to be a Christian and a citizen for other ministers who fought other battles in the decades and centuries that followed. It was not always with a musket or a sword that they fought. Instead, they wielded more powerful weapons by using their voices to shine light on the truth as the American quest for liberty continued.
The story of America's founding can't be told without the pastors who led with boldness and conviction. These clergymen remind us that liberty and faith go hand in hand. They didn't just preach freedom, they lived it. And in doing so, they helped to build a nation.